desde Perú nos vamos a trasladar hasta Europa nuevamente, que tenemos una mesa súper importantísima. Good afternoon to friends from Poland. I don't speak English very well, but our friends from FISAT Europe nos van a reemplazar, ¿eh? Así que
Hello, Joanna. Good afternoon.
Sí, me permito presentar a nuestros panelistas y a nuestros moderadores desde Polonia. Nos van a apoyar desde los Países Bajos, aunque estos días está en Sevilla. Demi Van Heuseling, ella es graduada en Geografía y Ordenación por la Universidad de Extremadura, estudiante del máster en Ciudad y Urbanismo. Cuenta con estudios de posgrado en urbanismo y gestión de proyectos europeos. Ha adquirido experiencia en investigación como técnico de apoyo a la investigación en geografía regional en la Universidad de Extremadura. Ha publicado varios artículos y capítulos de libro, entre los cuales uno últimos en editorial Thomson Reuters Arasandi. Actualmente está trabajando, como mencionaba, como técnico de proyectos en una consultoría de proyectos europeos en Sevilla y es miembro directivo de FISAT en la sede regional de Europa y África. También nos acompañan para conducir esta mesa nuestro amigo también profesor Rui Alexandre Castaño. Él tiene un doctorado internacional sobre planificación sostenible en zonas fronterizas, es licenciado en Ingeniería de Espacios Verdes e Ingeniería Agrícola y tiene un máster en planificación de auditoría y control de espacios verdes urbanos. Es un connato investigador postdoctoral en el proyecto de la Universidad de Azores de Punta Delgada en Portugal. Como investigador colabora además con otros centros de investigación como el Grupo de Investigación en Análisis de Recursos Ambientales de la Universidad de Extremadura, con el Centro de Investigación para la Mejora de los Recursos Endógenos en el Instituto Politécnico de Porto Alegre, Portugal, y en Madeira con el Centro de Investigación de Desarrollo e Innovación Turística en Madeira, en Portugal, y con el grupo de investigación de la Universidad de Campiñas, acá en nuestro continente, en Brasil. Y actualmente es profesor de la Universidad WSB de Polonia y profesor visitante en la Universidad de Johannesburgo, en Sudáfrica. Miembro también directivo de FISAT de la sede regional de Europa y África. Muy buenas tardes a Alexander, que está en Portugal. Ellos tienen la conducción de la mesa de variabilidad y cambio climático. Buenas tardes, Demi, Alexander, con ustedes en la conducción de la mesa.
Muy buenas tardes, Harry, muy buenas tardes, Julián, y todos mis amigos que están también por aquí, Edwin Vegas Gallo y todos tantos otros que están por aquí de muchos continentes y a los participantes que nos están viendo. Pues como bien sabéis, esta mesa es más dirigida, creo que al lenguaje de inglés, y entonces lo voy a hacer un poco en inglés. Mi compañera Demi hablará un poco en castellano, ¿ok? Conmigo sí. Tengo la doctora Demi Van Heuseling. Yo soy profesor, como diría bien Antonio Fernández Geri, Julio Alejandro Castaño, y si me permitéis, voy a pasar entonces un poco al inglés para que también coloquen nuestros compañeros de afuera en el evento. So, thank you so much to you all for joining us in this international event. So it's a pleasure to see you back once again, even if it's in this kind of virtual format. But thank you so much for joining us. And this is table 11, entitled Multidisciplinarity and Climate Changes. And as I told you, and as my colleague previously told, with me I have for this president of this table, Dr. Demi Van Heuseling, that will do like the translation for the Spanish, and I'm Professor Julio Alexandre Castaño, who will moderate also this thematic table. Well, we did this table. I guess we have four presentations. That the four of them are from Poland, as I see, and also from one of my institutions, from WSB. My colleagues Gregor Kinelski, Jakub Stecci, Karolina Muchekus, and Joanna Kurowska Peace. So I just want to give some words to my dear colleagues and participants. Well, for the ones that will talk in this thematic table, I just wanted to let you know that you have between 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, we just can rearrange it a little bit these times for all of us try to get into the schedule. So try to not go further than the 15 minutes. And the first presentation will be, I guess, if we want to follow this schedule, from Gregor Kinelski, entitled The Development of the Circular Economy in Relation to Decarbonization Processes. And after, I want to ask my colleague, perhaps in the end of the presentation, my colleague Demi Van Oosseling, to give some brief words in Spanish, just for all of us, because as we knew, this event is based on Latin America, and is more connected for the Portuguese, Spanish language, but also in English. So we try to create here a bridge between this table in English and also for the Spanish participants that we have among us. So in this regard, I also want to ask you if you want to do the questions after every presentation or in the end of all the presentations. In my opinion, I guess it will be better for us to have like a general debate in the end of all the presentations, because with this we can perhaps rearrange a little bit the times, and you can move the times as we prefer the most to get into the time. I guess we have like 1 hour and a half, if I'm not mistaken, but my colleague Demi can help me with this, because she studied this a little bit better.
We have till more or less 6:30.
Okay, thank you so much, Demi.
You're welcome.
With no more delays, I want to ask you once again if there is present with us Gregor Kinelski. Okay, thank you so much. And dear Gregor, when you are ready, please, you have the maximum. Please try to do it into 15 minutes, okay?
Yes, okay. Thank you.
The floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you. It's my first questions. I should make the break for translator, or will be the simultaneously?
No, dear Gregor. Yes.
Okay.
What you'll do is you can do your presentation just normal, and in the end, my colleague Demi Van Oosseling will do like a brief summary of your presentation in Spanish.
Okay. Okay.
So
thank
no
you.
worries. Okay. And the questions in the end we can translate it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's the circular economy. It's my topic today. Circular economic supports sustainable development and decarbonizations. Decarbonizations, especially for Poland, but for the rest of the world, is very important. It's necessary process and is undeniable that it's imperative. Sustainable development is a direction that supports decarbonizations, and decarbonization must be properly used in society, in Polish society, in Europe society, and world society. The circular economy is the next step in development and one of the decarbonization tools. It's our assumptions for our project. And circular economy, which is traditional concept in the economics of production and management of resources, has recently risen high in the agendas of policy makers, and an additional way of enhancing decarbonization through non-energy means and the potential solutions to the current partial decarbonization approach. The original concept of the circular economy was initially adopted with the aim of improving short to medium-term efficiency. For example, its allocative and technical efficiency in the operation and large organization. Of course, this is only the definition of this, but circular economy business models were presented as offering profitable and business growth by means of increasing production efficiency, risk mitigations, and the pursuit of new revenue opportunities. Of course, with the environmental and ecological benefits from reduced resource material, for example, consumptions, use and recycling, seen as positive externalities. And our vision for our research is about the decarbonizations must be properly perceived in society as it's the basis for future actions, such as implementation of the circular economy. It's, of course, for climate change. This is especially important in industrial areas that have to so been developing on the basis of coal, hard coal, The circular economy supports sustainable development and decarbonization in these areas. With the industry, with cargo. However, the circular economy is a broader concept and should be present in all parts of the world, regardless of energy source use. The traditional models for development and industrialization is resource and energy intensive, which economics grow accompanied by increasing carbon dioxide, CO2 emissions, keeping the average global temperature rise below 2 Celsius degree will require a drastic reduction in global net greenhouse gas emissions and ultimately zero emissions to the end. It is now considered possible to decarbonize economic growth and achieve deep reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, while increasing economic activity and prosperity still continues. Decarbonization is based on the following pillars: better energy efficiency on the first position, supply of zero emissions clean electricity instead of the fossil fuels derived electricity, and when possible, and making the land sector a large sink for carbon emission. Impact for society from our research: new technologies could drastically improve energy efficiency, including at the households level, leading to decline in the cost of energy, even the cost of electricity production, where to increases owning the massive investment in the new low carbon power plants. The second, provision of information to citizens and business is essential, as the opportunity to reduce energy consumption is often bypassed simply because people are not aware of it. And even its typical estimates of economic cost of transitions to low carbon world economy were correct, it would be a significant obstacle to the future growth. And from our consumption resources in recent years, numerous programs have emerged to reduce economic inequalities between countries and to overcome to ecological crisis. But however, each of these measures has been firmly opposed to leading multinational, which have enormous economic and political power over governments and international financial institutions. Substantial civil action is required to reduce the use of fossil fuels and switch to renewable energy while reducing inequalities within nations and redefining the global economic development model. About the studies and researches, this study applies methodological triangulations with consists the combined quantitative and quantitative methods by applications of many methods. According to a new paradigm in the management science that advocates the combination of several approach and methods in the management of often epistemological and methodological attitudes. Research answers for the following research questions, main questions. Which of following do you think has the most impact of decarbonizations? And for example, it's a few answers: subsidies for mining, subsidies for local government, prosumer solar photovoltaic development programs, capacity market, opening to the European Union energy market. Especially this research is in Poland. The survey one conducted online consisted 12 research questions together, and the online survey provides many possibilities to present questions and collect answer. And about our respondents' opinion, activities determining decarbonization process, we have the survey on 444 participants, and each of these answer or about the determinants, about like subsidies for mining, subsidies for local government and prosumers, programs, etc. The visible impact and significant impact is on the subsidies for the local governments. That's the people who want And society wants subsidies for local governments, not for the mining, not for the capacity market, not for the open, maybe not like the opening to energy market, but extremely subsidies for the local governments. And next one, which the following activities should be transferred from the central to local, and of course subsidies for the residents by the social its the needs from the central activities to the local activities. Generation in our survey, generation BB, generation X, generation Y, and generation Z. We divide our all surveys participants for the 4 generations, and it's not significant different answer from this, but we observe that the modern generation like Z, like Y, have a lot of open to the European Union energy market, capacity market. This is a lot of activities from this point. Main determinants and decarbonizations according to the respondents after the questions, it's subsidies, renewable energy sources, public educations, use city public transport, for example, offshore wind farms. It's a new project for Poland, quite new projects. Electromobility development, CO emission control, more control, market price and energy generation taking into account environmental cost, and of course photovoltaic, hydro energy, wind farms, all of this renewable energy. And at the end, the circular economy, which is traditional concept of the economics of productions and management resources in this, but we go to the concept for fundamentally based on closing the loop around system of extractions, productions, consumptions. The circular economy concept also addresses wider questions that frequently rise in relation to the impact of decarbonizations on economic growth in developing economies, as incorporates the decoupling of economic growth from the resource consumptions. And the circular economy is relevant to the decarbonizations. It's like decarbonization is the tools of circular economy of the energy sector in that support decarbonizations of the supply chain of each energy carrier by moving the focus from solely addressing the emissions from energy production to addressing emission from the underlying energy installations. And this approach is, however, limited when trying to fully account for emissions associated and use them any specific technologies, including the supply chain, particularly when the chain is situated across the national boundaries. This is applicable to all energy generation technologies. And the system, these boundaries for calculation of the emission factor and each energy carrier are therefore limited and do not necessarily consider to all life cycles. This approach is by definition the closer alignment to the net zero emissions ambitions, and which is moved away from the linear carbonization paradigm. And barriers for it, the decarbonization process in Poland, the key barriers here, measurements of life cycle, GHG emissions in technology supply chain using LCAR have tended to vary significance for 2 reasons. Many technologies can be highly context specific. In the example of solar and wind, contextual factors include resource input and technology, transportation, manufacturing, location, sizing and capacity, optional equipment, etc. There is no single and internationally harmonized methods of measurement and reporting of life cycle emissions, and therefore empirical literature tends to really a variety of methods in these emissions. And conclusions from our research, we could indicate the main factors of decarbonization process in Poland include the following: facilitating investment in wind, solar, geothermal, and hydro energy, circular economy implementation, construction conducting energy, policy and energy security, coordinating development of the most effective types of renewable energy sources, construction of the nuclear power plant, and regulated energy price and prices for product with high carbon content, and transformation of Silesia. Silesia region is, of course, the south of Poland, industrial region. Thank you for today. This is my publication about the transformation and on the Scopus base and on the Web of Science base about the determinants and by factors of determinations. Thank you for today. Is there any questions?
Many thanks, Gregor, for your interesting presentation. Once again, thank you so much for this presentation and also for sharing these scientific results in the open access journals, as you can see in the end. So therefore, I kindly ask my colleague, Dr. Demi van Oeseling, to do a brief summary of this presentation in Spanish, if possible.
Yes,
Demi.
perfect. I'll give the the abstract in Spanish. Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Acaba de dar su presentación el doctor Gregor Kinelski de la Universidad de Dąbrowa Górnicza en Polonia. Él nos ha hablado sobre el desarrollo de la economía circular en relación con los procesos de decarbonización. La decarbonización debe percibirse adecuadamente en la sociedad, ya que es la base para futuras acciones, como la implementación de la economía circular. Esto es especialmente importante en las áreas industriales que hasta ahora se han desarrollado sobre la base del carbón. La economía circular apoya el desarrollo sostenible y la decarbonización en estas áreas. Sin embargo, la economía circular es un concepto mucho más amplio y debe estar presente en todas las partes del mundo, independientemente de las fuentes de energía utilizadas. Este es el resumen, el breve resumen de su ponencia aquí en español. Y antes de seguir a la siguiente ponencia, les quería comentar también a todos los participantes en español que nos han comunicado desde la dirección que hay una transcripción en vivo de las próximas ponencias. Por ahora está en inglés. Si están interesados en seguir estas ponencias en inglés con subtítulos, pueden activar debajo aquí en la misma aplicación de Zoom, donde pone transcripción en vivo en CC, pueden activar los subtítulos y seguir a estas ponencias en inglés también, aunque después de cada ponencia yo seguiré dando un pequeño resumen en español también. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias,
También
Demi. Perdón que estaba en mute. Muchas gracias, Demi, por tu sumario. So thank you so much, Demi, for your summary of this presentation. And therefore, I kindly invite Dr. Jakub Steczi with the title of the presentation, The Impact of Fleet Electrification in, sorry, because this moves a little bit, electrification on carbon emissions, a case study from Poland. So, dear Jakub, you have between 10 to 15 minutes, okay? In the end, we'll do a summary, and also in the end of all the presentation, we'll try to not only to collect all the questions from the participants, but also to try to foster a little bit the debates about these topics. So, when you're ready, dear Jakub, the floor is all yours, okay? Thank
Gracias.
you so much.
Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por la invitación. Me gustaría poder presentarte en español, pero mi español es terrible y claramente todos estaremos mejor si hablo inglés. Entonces,
está muy bien.
So I will briefly try to speak about the impact of fleet electrification on carbon emissions, and this will be a case study from Poland. And this is an article we wrote with my colleagues and my PhD supervisor, and which just recently have been published. And the main implication, the main reason for this area of research is the fact that electrification of the fleet and decarbonization of the fleet is an important aspect of the decarbonization of the industry in general. And in Europe, for example, the transportation sector covers over 24 to 30% of overall emissions, depending how we calculate it. And this is the only sector which gradually keeps on growing. And for this reason, this is essential that we focus on this issue. And especially in such countries where the share of renewables is relatively small. So on one hand, the emissions related to electrification are still high, and there are concerns in this regard. But looking on the different perspective, this is an opportunity to have a tremendous reduction of energy in the transport sector. So in Poland, over 80% of energy comes from fossil fuels. And for these reasons, emissions calculated for electric vehicles are relatively high. And looking at the countries in Poland, Poland is one of those countries where the numbers are highest in the European Union. And for this reason, we took Poland into account to showcase actually a stress case and stress test of such a country, because if it would be proven that Poland actually electric vehicles in Poland make sense from economical and from environmental perspective, it would definitely be proven for all other countries where emissions are at a much better standing at this moment. So the study was conducted for a company which operates roughly 800 vehicles in Poland, and 619 of them were taken into consideration. And because we were struck by COVID as every other country, we decided to take the pre-COVID year, so to say, so from March 2019 till March 2020, in order to not have the results infected by this phenomenon. And there was a need for quite radical data cleaning and cleansing in order to assure a heterogeneity of the results. So the fleet of the enterprise we analyzed is quite complex and quite diverse in terms of purpose of using of those vehicles. So vehicles have been divided into 6 categories, which have different parameters and different carbon emissions associated. And for each category, there were an alternative of battery electric vehicle chosen of similar parameters, similar use case capacity, which was considered as a replacement for a given category of internal combustion engines. Another consideration we did, and I have to stress that this analysis was conducted on a tank-to-wheel basis. So we only looked at either fuel used during the usage of the vehicle or electricity used to charge and then to move the vehicle. So we completely we totally didn't took into account all the aspect of so-called well-to-wheel cycle, where one should consider as well how much energy and what are the emissions associated with extraction, transportation of the fuel in question. However, obviously, we took into account the emissions related to energy because those are intricate part of the process. And apart from calculating the CO2 emissions, we took into account and we calculate a simplified total cost of ownership analysis of those two groups of vehicles in question, namely internal combustion engine vehicles and battery electric vehicles. And to give you a better understanding of what are the fuel consumptions for this kind of fleet of 600 vehicles, this is roughly 60 tons of fuel being used every month. And here you can see a breakdown of how much fuel each category of vehicle uses. And what we found, and what was somewhat in line with other findings we found in the literature, is that there is a distinctive difference between the fuel consumption declared by producers, which is confirmed by, for example, WTPL tests, and the actual consumption in a real life. And this is especially important for a business case, because much higher emissions are achieved in case of short burst of usement of the vehicles, and this is very often a case for business use. So what we did next was to compare those results with real-time energy usage and emissions associated for battery electric vehicles for each of those groups. And as you can see that if we compare declared emissions in all the cases, battery electric vehicles for Poland with the current emissions of 2019, we have the case where the emissions of a tank-to-wheel cycle are higher for battery electric vehicles. And this confirms a part of narrative which is common, which says that electric vehicles in countries as Poland doesn't make sense because their emissions are higher than for internal combustion engine cars. But as we can see, again, for every of the examples presented and every categories presented on the screen, if we actually calculate the emissions associated with real fuel consumption, the picture is dramatically different, and in every case, battery electric vehicles are actually emitting less CO2. So this is another representation of aggregated numbers for each category. And what we did as well was to calculate how this will change in the future, taking into account that Polish energy mix is constantly changing towards being more renewable and renewable sources based. And we calculated for Polish energy policy for 2040. So this is a document which the most forward-looking Polish government document, assuming future energy mix. However, we believe, and this is consistent with historical results, that the decarbonization of Polish energy mix will happen much faster than assumed by the government. So as you can see, for each category, the emissions for both current levels of emissions for battery electric vehicles and for the future, so in line with Polish energy policy for 2040, are lower than for internal combustion engines. But on this accumulated graph, we can see that those emissions differ according for this particular company, depending on the as well the number of the cars in the given group. And what we did as well was the TCO and analysis of the operational cost and savings. So on average, due to the fact that electricity is cheaper than fuel, and energy consumption calculated in kilowatt hours is lower for every electric vehicle compared to internal combustion engines, savings can be generated. And just on a footnote, what we did was we calculated a mixed cost associated to the charging. So we both used AC charging for 80% of cases, and DC charging, which is a bit more expensive and needs to take into account the energy losses at the level of around 20%. And we did a TCO comparison for two segments, two categories. Those were SUV vehicles and B segment category. And as you can see, there is a significant change. So on the left-hand side, you can see two vehicles which are similar. This is Skoda Kodiaq and Skoda Enyaq, and those cars with the similar with the equal monthly mileage. In this case, the electric Skoda Enyaq is roughly 100 euro cheaper in TCO for a given month. And we calculated the break-even point, and for those two vehicles, this break-even is at 600 kilometers of monthly mileage. The situation is different for a B segment category, because those cars are the price difference is significantly bigger, and for this reason a much bigger monthly mileage is necessary to reach a break-even. So in summary, we've been able to show that if one would rely in his decisions on producers' data, the results would be completely different compared to decisions made on the real data and the real consumption of the vehicles. And clearly this is relevant because the fleets in the companies are those which will be electrified in most cases in the first will be updated first. So this is important that this message is conveyed to the business. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jakub, for your presentation. In fact, it was very interesting, these results, and only through these results it is possible for the decision makers to take some measure regarding these issues. So I guess these kind of studies are very interesting, and also they gains even more relevance when they are published in some open access journals, like is the case of, for example, of Energies, as your previous colleague did. So it was quite interesting when these kind of results are available. Well, in this regard, I kindly ask my colleague, Dr. Demi Van Oeseling, if she wants to give us a brief summary of this presentation in Spanish. Demi.
Yes. Thank you very much, Jacob, for your intervention. Hola a todos los hispanohablantes. Voy a hacer un pequeño resumen de la exponencia de Jacob en español. Su ponencia es titulada El impacto de la electrificación de la flota de las emisiones de carbono y es un estudio de caso aplicado a Polonia. La electrificación de la flota es una de las medidas propuestas para lograr la neutralidad climática en los próximos años. La sustitución de los vehículos con motor de combustión interna por vehículos eléctricos tiene un impacto positivo en la reducción de las emisiones de carbono en algunos países. Sin embargo, en los países altamente dependientes de los combustibles fósiles, tal posibilidad requiere un examen con respecto a los medios de generación de electricidad y la combinación de combustibles utilizados en un sistema de energía. Uno de esos países es Polonia, seleccionado como un ejemplo de la economía fuertemente dependiente de los combustibles fósiles. El objeto principal de este estudio es investigar el impacto de la electrificación de la flota de una individual ubicada en Polonia en la reducción de las emisiones de carbono. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Demi. Thank you so much. So I also want to give you some information for not only for the Spanish but colleagues and participants, but also from the Polish participants and other nationality participants that could be among all these 101 participants that I saw here in our panel. So in the bottom of the page there is an item entitled live transcript. Then if you pick there, you can follow also the presentations, for example, in Spanish will be translated for English. So if you want to keep following this event after this thematic table that's only for English language or mostly for English language, you also can follow up the event in the other thematic tables, even in the ones that are in Spanish. So it's just one information that I want to give you. That's only now I realize that we have this capacity, which is kind of interesting from our organization to being able to provide to the participants. Well, without more delays, I want to announce our next speaker that will be Dr. Carolina Muchekus with a presentation titled How to Improve Management of Electricity, the Case of an Energy Commons. So, dear Carolina, if you're there and when you're ready, please share the screen with us, and you have between 10 to 15 minutes of your presentation. So thank you so much. When you're ready, the floor is all yours.
Buenos días a todos. Good afternoon, dzień dobry. Thank you very much for the opportunity to have a short presentation during this conference. This is a great pleasure for me. I represent WBS University from Poland, but I also have an opportunity to work in GZM Metropolis. This is the first and the only formally established metropolis in Poland, which gives me a huge research field. I'm deeply interested in strategic management in a broad sense. Today, I would like to share with you my latest research made together with my research team from Poland. Most generally, the research concerns an attempt to answer the question how to improve management of electricity, and more specifically, competitive platform, common benefits in electricity and gas distribution. The content of my presentation is as shown on the slide, and I will try to follow these points and finish on time. Simultaneous collaboration and competition or co-petition has so far been studied among firms or non-profit organizations, leaving the public arena largely unexplored. This study focuses on identifying the measuring common benefits by local government actors in competition. The GZM Metropolis, composed of 41 municipalities of 41 cities, has been chosen on purpose to identify and measure those effects of competition that cannot be achieved by the individual actors alone, by the cities alone. There have been used real data and tariffs to run simulations that identify common and individual benefits generated in gas and electricity distribution. We're searching for savings, even though the distribution of these savings is not equal among municipalities. Additionally, the energy communes can act as competitive platforms to optimize energy costs of municipalities. Competition refers to the simultaneous occurrence of cooperation and competition between two or more involved actors, parties. We follow the initial understanding offered by the researchers Bengtson and Koch that competition is the cooperation of competitors, and at the same time this cooperation and competition can take place in various fields of competitors' activities. We complement this original take with two additional conditions. The first one, the intent to create value, both private and common. And the second, the presence of paradoxical tensions between involved actors. Taken together, those three characteristics make it clear that competition can provide benefits that would be otherwise unavailable for these actors individually. But they are often cognitively demanding and challenging the RIP. Therefore, the firms cooperate to various degrees across industries. On the slide, you can see Europe at night, and this pink symbol shows the area of GZM metropolis. So we're exactly here right now. GZM is the only metropolis, as I said in Polish, established under the Government Act. It brings together 41 cities inhabited by a total of nearly 2.3 million people. The creation of metropolis is the result of many years of efforts of local government officials who have often proved that they want to cooperate with each other. It is also worth mentioning that GZM metropolis generates about 8% of Polish GDP. This analysis was carried out through simulations based on real data, as I said, in two incremental steps. First, we looked at electricity and gas distribution cost optimization, which resulted from the project coordinated by the Metropolis GZM. This is point 1 and 2. And secondly, we looked at additional possibilities of reducing the cost of electricity distribution with the use of energy communities. Our analysis focuses on the effects of competitors' cooperation, which constitutes an added value and would not be achieved individually. The in-depth analysis covered the electricity consumption facilities in 25 cities. In total, over 5,000 electricity consumption points participated in the optimization, and the total gross annual cost of electricity distribution reached the value over 34 million zlotys, Polish zlotys. The total amount of possible savings here is almost 5.5 million Polish zlotys annually, which is on average 15.7% of incurred distribution costs. The minimum and maximum average level of benefits amounted from 0.1 to 44.5% respectively. And these levels broken down into individual categories of savings are presented on the slide. The group of costs related to contracted capacity has the largest share in the total amount. Savings in this group amount to over 3 million Polish zlotys. The second largest group of savings is the group of costs raised related to changing the tariff group. And the next group of savings is related to the installation of equipment to the compensation of reactive power. And these results concern the electricity distribution. And now let's get back to the gas results. and gas savings. In total, 335 gas consumption points participated in the research, and the total annual gross cost of gas distribution amounted to over 4 million Polish zlotys. In the total amount of possible savings is 500,000 Polish zlotys annually, which is on average over 13% distribution costs incurred. And as you showed it before, this time gas data, the minimum and maximum average levels from 0 to 27.9% respectively, and these levels broken down into individual categories of savings are presented on the slide. The group of costs related to contracted capacity has also the largest share in the total amount. Savings in this group amount to more than 500,000 Polish zlotys. And the second largest of savings in this group, of course, related to change of tariff group to W4. And the last step of research, the in-depth analysis, covers the electricity consumption facilities administered by organizational units of 11 communes, which is in accordance with applicable Polish law. These 11 communes may be a part of energy cooperative. And when discussing the simulation results, we underline that the savings obtained in stage 1 and illustrated on previous slides do not require any investment outlays. This is because cost optimization includes in particular the adjustment of the ordered power and of the tariff group to the current consumption profile. Only the voltage adjustment of the connection of some facilities and reactive power compensation require minor investments. And stage 2 reveals itself to be more difficult to implement. The complexity and difficulty of building energy cooperative is caused by the lack of frameworks proven and tested in practice, and the lack, because this is a brand new concept here, and lack of implementations that could serve as a model to be followed. Our analysis shows that the implementation of energy cooperatives in communes where it is largely possible may bring substantial benefits. The action allows them to avoid variable costs of electricity distribution, which, depending on the receiving structure in the commune, amount to between 66 to 86% of the total distribution cost. Showing the positive effects, we fulfilled the primary theoretical contribution to our study that we add to the list of competition benefits discussed in the literature, a relevant category of operational efficiency increase. The second theory contribution is that we extend the scope of competition analysis beyond business and non-profit organizations to include public actors. While this is less evident actor in the strategy literature, horizontal interdependence encourages further studies on when and how municipalities can effectively collaborate, even if competing in efficiency in other arenas. And the third theory contribution takes account of a regulated environment of energy distribution, and it is important to examine regulatory environments in search of competition opportunities to create a greater social and public benefit. And lastly, we introduced the term of competitive platform, which is a novelty in the competition literature. The energy communes are value co-creating platforms that can effectively work within the public environment and possibly spin beyond the business realm. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for your interesting and relevant presentation. Thank you so much. So, as the same we did before, I kindly ask my colleague Demi Van Oeseling, if possible, for a brief summary of this presentation in Spanish for our Spanish participants. Demi.
Vale. Muy bien. Carolina nos ha hablado en su ponencia con el título ¿Cómo mejorar la gestión de la electricidad? El caso de las comunas energéticas. Nos ha explicado en este estudio, donde se centra en identificar y medir la generación de beneficios comunes por parte de los actores del gobierno local en la competición, que no pueden ser logrados solo por actores individuales. Se han utilizado datos y tarifas reales para ejecutar simulaciones que identifican los beneficios comunes e individuales generados en la distribución de gas y electricidad. El ahorro se puede lograr mediante la mutualización de la adquisición de energía, aunque la distribución de los ahorros no sea igual entre todos los municipios. El estudio muestra que las comunidades energéticas pueden actuar como plataformas cooperativas para optimizar los costos energéticos de todos los municipios. Thank you very much, Carolina.
Muchas gracias, Demi. So thank you so much, Demi, for this brief summary that you made to all of us. So lastly, but not least, I want to present also our participant, Joanna Kroskopis, with the presentation entitled Determinants of Sustainable Cross-Border Cooperation on the Polish-Czech-Slovak Borderland, a project approach. So Joanna, when you're ready, please share your screen with us. I already see that you shared, so have between 10 to 15 minutes. So the floor is all yours. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. At the beginning, let me express my gratitude for our colleagues, especially Julian Morales Seda and Antonio Fernando Jerry, for inviting me and my colleagues for this conference. We appreciate it very much. Probably you remember that 2 years ago, I participated alone. Then Carolina joined me last year, and now we present as a team of 4 people from Poland, from WSB University. And well, I hope this is not only way to maintain our cooperation, but also to extend it for the future activities. Well, Carolina, in the previous presentation, she focused on interorganizational cooperation within Górnośląsko-Zagłębiowska metropolis, and I will focus on cross-border cooperation, which is really close to this topic because Górnośląsko-Zagłębiowska metropolis is also located more or less on the Polish-Czech-Slovak border. So I will present my study concerning the closeness and permanent cross-border cooperation, which is crucial for this region. Of course, this research were conducted before the pandemic. So the pandemic impact is not revealed in this presentation, but I hope it will be also interesting for you. Well, because of due to the limited time, well, I will skip the introduction, but I would like only to highlight that cross-border cooperation is developed in many models and schemes, and one of them are cross-border projects. And
excuse me, Professor Jana, could you please switch on the full screen slides?
Well, I see full screen. You don't see full screen?
No.
No, we are seeing, if possible, press F5. But
yes, I press.
You can do it as you prefer. But if you can put in full
what
screen.
About now? It's changed or not?
No. Please press F5.
Yes, I pressed right now. The same?
Yes.
Yes, nothing happened.
Okay, so once again, maybe I will stop this presentation. Okay,
okay.
And maybe I will start again. Moment. What about now?
Not full screen.
But no worry.
Okay, so I think that
continue.
we will stay with this because probably something wrong with my equipment, with my computer. Okay, so I promise I will shorten this presentation as possible. Okay, so I would like only to highlight that cross-border projects they are also one of the best way to develop cross-border cooperation. But the problem is that when the project is conducted, cooperation is rather close, it's intensive, and when the project ends, the cooperation in many cases is lower and lower. It can disappear even. Yes, so this is not the good for spending European funds, especially Interreg program funds, to support such activities which can't guarantee a long-term cross-border cooperation. And taking this into account, I designed the assumption that strengthening of cross-border relations within or using cross-border projects should base both on close and permanent relations, which are visible in this slide, I hope, more or less, yes. So this was my assumption in this research. And as I said, the problem is that when partners start cross-border projects, they focus on ongoing cooperation, on the planned activities and outputs. And they, of course, they declare their intention in the proposal that they are going to develop cross-border cooperation even after the project time life. But the problem is when I evaluate such projects, that when it ends, as I said, this is problematic to point out any new activities, any new kind of relations develops thanks to just projects. So frankly speaking, it's really hard to guarantee permanent long-term cross-border cooperation based on the, let's say, general rules of developing cross-border projects. So based on literature review, I defined 3 dimensions of cross-border cooperation in cross-border projects. The first is cross-border cooperation as a reason, as a premise to applying for funds for such projects. Second, this is a method of conducting cross-border projects on both sides of the border. There also it's necessary to implement cross-border cooperation within project management. And the third dimension is cross-border cooperation as a benefit resulting from cross-border project. Of course, this is the rule model. It should be like this, but I know after many evaluation of Interreg programs and projects that it doesn't work like this. So my research problem in this study was to assess the development of cross-border cooperation on the Polish-Czech-Slovak borderland based on the project co-financed by Interreg program. So they're just cross-border projects. And I also defined my research goal, which is identification of determinants of cross-border cooperation in that area based on such projects. I also pointed out 3 research questions, but they will be presented in the next slides. As I said, maybe at the beginning, this is a part of a bigger study conducted for Euroregion Cieszyn Silesia. So I applied in this research various methods. In this part, which is presented right now, I used exploratory factor analysis. And in my research, I focused on the Polish-Czech-Slovak borderland. You can see that the Polish-Czech border land is longer than Polish-Slovak. It's diverse a little bit, but I can say that in the period 2004-2019, almost 4,000 cross-border projects were realized there.
Professor Joanna, we still see the first slide.
Exactly, we are still on the first slide. You need to go past the slides through your talking.
You do not see any changes of the slides?
No, you just see the first one.
Oh my God, so this is
no problem, because we are listening to you, but we cannot see the slides, so you can.
Well, but Alex, my presentation is really nice, so I regret very much that you can still see this. What about now? It's changing or not?
Yes, it's changing, and it's in full screen, so you can.
So now it's perfect. Now it's perfect.
Okay, so the third time is the best time. But I can mention that today I got my third shot of vaccination. So maybe this is the reason why I'm not so fluent in this presentation as usually. But okay, I will do my best to continue. Okay. So now you can see the slide with the data. Yes, data which I used in my research. So the sample were Polish organization cooperated with Czech and Polish partners on the borderland, and the sample was 121 organizations. You can see that they mainly focus on tourism and education, culture, this directions of cross-border cooperation. But also it's necessary to underline that many partnerships last for many years. Look, almost 80% of my target groups, they are partners who cooperate more than 20 years. So this is rather stable partnerships, I can say. And in my research, I analyzed 3 factors. First, there was reasons of participation in cross-border projects. And using this exploratory factor analysis, I pointed out 3 key groups of factors responsible for the reasons of participation in cross-border cooperation. But what is important, that the second factor, increasing of involvement in cross-border cooperation, is strongly related to the topic concerning partnerships in cross-border cooperation. But when I analyzed the reasons for undertaking cross-border projects, their priorities, I also found out that the order is diverse. So 3 priority reasons for strengthening cross-border cooperation as a reason to start project. You can see the second one is possibility of strengthening cooperation with foreign partners. So it's visible here that this reason is important for organizations who apply for European funds, especially Interreg program. The second field of my analysis was obstacles in cooperation. And again, I pointed out 5 groups of factors. And one of them, the fourth one, insufficient demand for cross-border cooperation as a lack of potential to develop it, is strongly related to the topic. I mean, this is one of obstacles, one of key obstacles, which is responsible for the problems with cross-border cooperation within project. And again, when I analyzed the items, I found out that the third important obstacle is lack of funds for cooperation with foreign partners. Of course, it's not good because it explains why organizations focus on Interreg program as a main source to financially support such cooperation. And the third field of my analysis, they were benefits from cross-border project realization. And again, I using advanced statistical methods, I pointed out 2 groups of factors. And one of them is related to cross-border cooperation within projects. And when I compared this factors, which means when I compared possibility of co-financing project related to various fields of socioeconomic development and also with CBC, I realized that the important benefit is strengthening cooperation between partners on both sides of the border. That means that organizations which decide to cooperate, they are aware that one of benefits for them coming out from cross-border project should be strengthening cooperation between partners. But in this way, you can also see that their declaration, their intentions at the beginning, they not reflect in the project results. So just to summarize, among the reasons for undertaking cross-border cooperation in project, I can point out the possibility of strengthening cooperation with foreign partners. So that means that this is important reason for start such project for almost 60% of my respondents. Concerning the benefits of cross-border project realization, I can say that close relations between partners are more important for cooperating organizations than permanent cooperation. It's not good, because when you take into account the goals of a European cohesion policy, yes, it's clear that European Commission wants to invest in projects with long-term results, long-term effects, and this research revealed that there are not such results in this project which European Commission expects. And key conclusions. You can see the yellow point in this slide. I hope you can see it, yes? It reveals that on the Polish-Czech-Slovak borderland, cross-border cooperation is more intense, is closer than long-lasting, I mean permanent, yes? It's a result of this study. As I said, is not good. So we definitely should define some recommendations how to make this cooperation more permanent, yes? How to make it more stable. And thanks to my research, I designed a model of maintaining or developing cross-border cooperation within the project. And I can say that strengthening cooperation between partners could be key determinant of cross-border cooperation development in that area, both as a reason and as a result. That means that partners are aware of this necessity to conduct not only activities, not only to achieve their short-term results, but also to keep in the mind that it's necessary to provide long-term cross-border cooperation thanks to the fund involved from Interreg program, for example. But the key obstacle in this process is just lack of such funds for cooperation. That means that most of organizations, they focus only on Interreg program. They do not take into account various funds, especially private funds, private capital, to multiply the results of public investments supported by Interreg program. And this is key problem. So I recommended some activities to support cross-border cooperation development in that area. First, to make it more approachable through providing various funds for CBC. So not only Interreg program. The second, to keep cross-border cooperation more permanent through continuously undertaking diverse new cross-border projects. So that means that you do not need to apply only to Interreg program, but you should also try to start some maybe smaller projects based on own funds, but such projects can provide more stable cooperation even in the smaller scale. And the last one, in my opinion, it's necessary to make cross-border relations closer thanks to the involving borderland communities. It's a real problem that in many projects, partners focus on themselves. They focus on their needs, their institutional needs, how to buy equipment, how to spend money for various activities, but they do not take into account the borderland communities' needs. And my experience shows that when you involve borderland communities in such projects, you can observe then multiplying of cross-border relations. And in my opinion, cross-border cooperation is increased thanks to this. So definitely we recommend not only Euro regions, but also for cross-border functional areas to involve more cross-border cooperation, also borderland communities. And thank you for your attention. And well, I'm very sorry that it was not possible to present you this slides in the way as I wanted, but unfortunately there were some technical problems from my side, I guess. No problem. So sorry for this, and I hope it was visible at the end.
Yeah, it was. Thank you so much, Joanna, for your interesting presentation. In fact, this is also my field of expertise, and we have conducted similar studies, but not in projects in the population in 2015 and 2016, and we have defined 14 critical factors for the cross-border cooperation and success of these projects. And it's interesting for me to see now some of these factors are used to assess some of these projects. Back then we published into a Q1 journal like in Habitat International, and now I see that many of these factors are taken into account to assess these projects, which I believe that is very, very interesting. Well, therefore, I kindly ask my colleague Demi, as the previous presentations, if it's possible for her to do some summary in Spanish of this presentation. Demi.
Thank you, Joanna, for the interesting presentation. La presentación de Joanna, de la doctora Joanna, se llamaba Determinantes de la cooperación transfronteriza sostenible en la frontera polaca, checa, eslovaca, y nos ha dado un enfoque hacia el proyecto. El resumen nos cuenta: la cuestión se refiere a la evaluación de desarrollo de la cooperación transfronteriza basada en proyectos cofinanciados por los fondos de la Unión Europea. El objetivo de la investigación ha sido la identificación de los determinantes de la cooperación transfronteriza basada en los proyectos transfronterizos cofinanciados por el programa Interreg en la frontera polaca, checa y eslovaca. La autora nos ha identificado los determinantes de fortalecimiento de la cooperación transfronteriza en un modelo de 3 dimensiones que hemos podido ver, que estaba basado en el ciclo de la vida del proyecto transfronterizo. Muchas gracias, Joanna. Y devuelvo la palabra al doctor Rui Alexander.
Muchas gracias, Demi. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to all the participants, because in fact, all these topics are very relevant for this event's topic and this event scope that is towards our new agenda of sustainable development. In fact, all of them are very interesting and very complementary, even if the last presentation is about cross-border cooperation, and the first 3 ones were about energy and how we can do like greener cities and all these kind of policies for perhaps for this measure for urban policies. They are totally complementary, because we knew that in Europe this is even more relevant when we are talking about this kind of borderlands and all of these regions that we need to do strategies in a more complex way, that because we have like more border areas and different legislations, and this is quite difficult for us to planning in these conditions. So I believe these works are very complementary for this thematic field, and also for this thematic table. I do expect honestly that we can give some guidelines with this table for the future. Well, in this regard, as we already seen, we are out of time because we delayed a little bit. Even our table start a little bit delayed, so we not want to delay more the event. I'm just want to ask them if there is some relevant question from our participants, because if not, as some principles and guidelines given me by the organization, they asked me to send these questions via email to the participants. As for Gregor, as for Jacob, Carolina, and Joanna, because we are kind of run of time, because you knew that we are a little bit delayed. So once again, thank you so much for this quite interesting presentation to all of you, and also for joining us, and also to our participants to be there. I'm not sure if our colleague Demi wants to give some final word in Spanish. Demi, si quieres.
Sí, solo quería resumir y comentar en español lo hablado por el doctor Rui Alexandre. Nos ha dado las gracias a todos los participantes desde Polonia, desde la Universidad WPS en Dąbrowa Górnicza, allí en Polonia. Nos ha dado las gracias por las interesantes intervenciones, y dado que no hemos recibido respuestas o preguntas aquí en el chat, les ha pedido a todos los participantes que si tuvieran alguna pregunta más, les pueden enviar un correo a los participantes y preguntarles posterior al terminar el congreso todas las dudas que pudieran tener. Si tienen preguntas en español y quieren que los traduzca, yo lo puedo traducir también, si hiciera falta. Queremos dar las gracias a todos los participantes y vamos a proseguir a la siguiente mesa. Muchas gracias.
Pues, muchas gracias. So, just a final word. It's also my thanks not only for the organization, but also for Demi for her pivotal role in helping me in this table. So thank you so much, Demi. It's always a pleasure to work with you. Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rui Alexandre, Demi. Or thanks to the speakers of the WESB University of Poland. Thank you, Joanna, for your words. FISAT will continue to work together with your university for the next few years. Thank you, everybody. Gracias. Continuaremos con FISAT, siempre trabajando con la Universidad de Polonia, con la que tenemos un convenio. Y bueno, como lo ha mencionado Joanna, hace 2 años hemos estado allí y FISAT se hizo merecedora de un premio que nos permitió a nosotros también motivarnos aún más para seguir trabajando en convenio con la Universidad de Polonia y esperemos volviendo a la presencialidad nuevamente, saliendo de un poco de la virtualidad el próximo año, estar nuevamente en el hemisferio norte y en Europa compartiendo con los amigos y en las investigaciones, en los proyectos de la Universidad de Polonia.